It's the After Show with TelecomTV's Guy Daniels and Ray Maistre.
Welcome to the After Show on TelecomTV. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content, and we are broadcasting live and waiting to hear from you at the end of day one of our Spotlight on 5G week. Well, it has been a very busy day, so allow us to help you unwind with our perfect remedy for the trade show blues. We've got a great lineup of guests joining us today who are going to answer your questions, so if you haven't yet got in touch, then do so now. Don't leave it too late. There's a form on the website below this video. As always, the After Show is co-hosted by Ray Maistre, Editorial Director at TelecomTV. Hello, Ray. Now, as I mentioned, it's been a busy and a very long day so far, with a very early start to launch our news-based programme, The Slice. MWC is happening this week, mainly virtually. What's been your main highlights from the day?
Well, Guy, it's been a strange day because apart from covering MWC related developments while not actually being there, it's been day one of an MWC and I don't feel overwhelmed with a deluge of industry data. No company has issued 35 press releases within 2 minutes. There's been plenty to talk about, of course, and we covered some of the biggest announcements in the slice, of course. And we've had some great insights from our 5G core discussions and our interview with Google Cloud's George Nazi. The thing that's really getting people heated is our tapas taste-off. People just love food.
Oh yes, I feel my mouth watering already. Well, we started our day with the Strategic Outlook programme, which today focused on 5G core, and I'm sure we'll be receiving a number of questions around this topic. But on with the show, and joining us live on the programme today are Emmanuel Bidet, who is VP Convergent Networks Control at Orange, Mark Henry, Technology and Business Strategy Director at BT, Timo Jokiaho, who is Chief Technologist, Global Telco Ecosystem at Red Hat, and Richard Band, Head of Mobile Core and 5G Communications Technology Group, Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Hello everyone, very good to see you all again. Now we've got questions from our viewers to get through as well as some of our own today, plus a few surprises along the way. But first, despite it being June, it's MWC week, and usually that means an enormous gathering of the telecoms community in Barcelona. This year it's a little different as COVID-19 continues to disrupt the world.
Yes, things are rather different this year. We find ourselves reporting on the event remotely. But if you've watched the first episodes of our Top 10 Mobile Moments series, you'll know that TelecomTV has a long history supporting the event, going all the way back to 2002. But can you remember your first MWC? Well, let's ask our guests. Emmanuel, do you remember your first MWC and any particular memory you might have from it at all?
Well, the first time I went to Geneva a few times, but the first time I came back to the MWC was in 2015. And I must say I was surprised by the number of booths, the number of people. I was really impressed. And I guess that today it's a bit different.
Yes, it absolutely will be a little bit different today due to the pandemic impact. And 2015, that sounds like when the show was really starting to ramp up and to get into those big tens of thousands of numbers. Thanks, Emmanuel. Mark, what about MWC for you? Is this a show you've traditionally been to, and do you have any memories of your first visit?
Well, I'm a relative newbie really to MWC. The first time I went was in 2018. And I'd just bought a step counter, which I was wearing, and I was just amazed that I was covering over 10 kilometers every day. So what I remember most is having sore feet.
I think that's a very familiar memory for many. And I wonder if that 10K was just inside the show rather than just the whole day. I'm sure. Yeah, right. Wow. That's pretty amazing. That's a lot of meetings you had there. Excellent. Thanks, Mark. And Timo, what about yourself? What's your history at MWC?
So I cannot remember the year, but my first MWC was when it was in Cannes for the last time, and since then I have been in single one of those. Representing 3 different network equipment providers I have been working for, technology scouting and counting my steps as well. Now, my Red Hat times was a little bit different because that was customer meetings only, sitting in the meeting rooms all the time. Very different.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so I can see that the step count is probably going to be a very big trend as we work through the week here. And Richard, what about your first MWC and any particular memories?
I don't know if it counts as MWC, but certainly my memory is mostly from the 3G SMA when it was still in Cannes, back when I was a junior developer. And I was just amazed by the event, the scale of the event even back then. Of course, Mobile World Congress in Barcelona is so much bigger. The thing I remember most is probably all the goodies that I went hunting for. That was the time where I didn't have to worry too much about making a good impression, so it was just going for goodies.
Yes, back in the days, I remember the Cannes days. Yeah, there were fewer daily deadlines and more opportunity for some of the finer things in life, perhaps. Excellent. Well, thanks everybody for your memories there. And I think Guy and I both vaguely remember Cannes in some form or another. So, Guy, back over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Hey, Richard, I've got to ask you, were you part of the HP Bazaar Beach Camp then?
I don't think so. No, I would have remembered probably.
Okay, good. Well, if anyone at all can remember the HP Bazaar Beach Camp, then they should tune into our top 10 mobile moments, because we've got an old segment we've rescued from the archives about developers back in it's about 2005 or something like that. Quite early on. That's well worth watching. In fact, I was watching a Reuters report earlier today, and they were commenting that MWC was also known as the mobile. Well, that's news to me, and it sounds like someone's cut and pasted and missed off the last line there. Anyway, thanks for all your memories of MWC and 3GSM, and before that, GSM World Congress. Let's move on to our first question today that we've received, and it's a good one. Here's a question. How have or will standards from the SDO community, the Standards Development Organizations, play a role in shaping your collective 5G strategies? And Timo, perhaps we could start by asking you that.
Yeah, so I think SDOs play big role, as they have always been in telco industry, ensuring interoperability globally. So the standards are very, very important and continue to be so, in my opinion. Although we as Red Hat, we represent the platform and tools domain, but still. Now, having said that, open source, of course, plays a role together with standards. So open source will not replace standards, and vice versa. That's not going to happen. But what's happening is that open source probably accelerates the development of standards, some standards as well, as we have seen, for example, in 3GPP 5G service-based architecture, when the 3GPP has taken a novel approach and called for kind of a lot of IT technology like containers, microservices, you name it, and software-based approach. And open source is very, very nicely aligned with that kind of SDO work.
Great, thank you very much, Timo. You're absolutely right. We are seeing that influence more and more now. It's going to be more prevalent. Any of our other guests want to comment on the influence and the impact of standards in Emmanuel, please?
Yes, maybe a few words to complement what has just been said. As a CSP, Orange is obviously very interested in having a full interoperability between all the solutions that we have in our network, and that's why we are involved in many SDO, around 40 SDO, if I remember well, for Orange. So that's why that underlines the importance that has SDO for Orange. But at the same time, I agree. Open source community are becoming more and more important, and we are now, as Orange, also more and more being part of that kind of communities. And it seems very important in order to accelerate the solution that we could at the end introduce in our network.
Great, thank you, Emmanuel. And Mark, please.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think what we saw, our strategy is very firmly informed by the standards bodies, and what we saw in 3GPP and release 15 and 16 is 3GPP was really good at working really closely with a wide group of stakeholders, NGMN as well, and in particular with governments and the vertical industries, and then specifying 5G to meet their needs. So what we took from that really did inform our strategy for 5G, which is to grow our business in those areas.
Great, that's interesting to hear. Thanks very much, Mark. Okay, well, if we've got no other comments on the standards topic, we have a lot of questions. So why don't I hand across to Ray for our next question?
Okay, thanks, Guy. And here is our next audience question. And there's obviously been a lot of discussion and news today around how 5G can fulfill its potential. And the question is, do you see the 5G core having to evolve and go through more rapid standards upgrades if it is to support the growing array of RAN technologies and the increasing demands being placed on CSPs? So this seems like a question about the expectation for the 5G core and what it's going to be able to deliver in terms of capabilities and service delivery. So who would like to come in and comment on this? Mark, maybe.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I mean, this is a really interesting topic because standards in telco, they've been slow, but they've provided a very robust ecosystem for us. I think with a cloud native 5G core, we're going to be able to move much, much faster. And the question is, can we move faster across the whole of the end-to-end ecosystem and do that from standards as well? And, we can see a future when standards are specified and actually we have a kind of very tight tool chain from the 5G core through to the devices themselves, and we have a coordinated software release that will allow us to release software and then for standards releases much more quickly. And we have a situation today where we're trying to get features into releases to get them into market to fix something that's in the network right now or coming in 6 or 12 months. And we'd certainly like to see that come down to a much more rapid deployment timescale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're seeing a real crunch of the timescales across the entire industry and ecosystem, and starting to see that already. Thanks, Mark. Timo, you wanted to come in here.
Yeah, so supporting what Mark was saying is this continuous integration and continuous delivery model, which is a big part of cloud nativeness in addition to other things. And if we kind of, as an industry, if we adopt all these GitOps models and treat everything as a code and rely on single source of truth, as people call it, for GitOps, and use GitOps workflows for, to transition from current state to desired state and all these things, that would, first of all, accelerate a lot the upgrades and updates and feature enhancements in the industry. And if that model, which I believe will be widely adopted within the CSP community, that also will kind of make things more consistent, more harmonized, and quicker. And that's, as I said, a big part of the cloud nativeness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we see a real desire as well amongst the operator community to have those kind of capabilities and skills on board. Richard, you've got some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I think the question was about, if the standards can be updated quick enough. My personal take on it is there's a real challenge here, and Mark, I think, explained pretty well what's the perspective from the operator side. I think more in general, we need to think a little bit differently about the network. If you've heard me speak before, I'm firmly convinced that in 5G, the network is a starting point, and on top of the network, we will innovate together with non-telco stakeholders. And here is the piece where Timo was talking about. CI/CD is a super important capability to really accelerate and experiment faster, to create things together. Whether that will then feed back into the standards or not, I think is an open question. I think there's a lot of things that we can do on top of the networks. Historically, as a telco industry, we didn't necessarily capture that very well. We left it to other players to capture the value on top of the network. So I think one of the challenges with 5G is to work much better together with non-telco stakeholders, do a fast innovation. And then, of course, if that requires the evolution on the network side in terms of network capabilities, we need to find a way to bring that into the standards, because that's part of the value of the telecom industry, is the interoperability. But I think this is not the only piece. The other piece is really how do we build on top, and here the CI/CD, the innovation is really important in my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of moving parts, but I think a real sense that the entire industry, I think, is all moving in the same direction here. I don't think there's a battle around this. I think there's a will for everybody to move this forward. Okay, so I think if we have got the answers to that question, I think I'll hand over to you, Guy, for the next part of the programme.
Great, thank you very much, Ray. Well, it's time now for a special new feature. We're calling it TelecomTV Uncorked, for reasons that will become very apparent. To celebrate one of the pleasures of the networking hour and after-show parties at MWC, we're going to help ourselves to a glass of wine. But not just any wine, because each day this week we're going to select wine from a different major region of Spain with the help of our expert, Pierre Mansour, who is Director of Wine at the Wine Society, a multi-award-winning UK-based cooperative that's actually been serving its members since 1874. I don't think I was a member back then. Anyway, let's see what Pierre has for us today.
The first bottle that I've picked is a Carver, and this is the Society's Carver, which is a wine that is under our own label. And Carver was an invention of the Catalans. Barcelona is in Catalonia, and actually, as a Spanish culture, the Catalans are very inventive, very, very creative, incredibly well organized. And Carver as a sparkling wine requires real attention to detail. It's a very long process to make Carver. I've picked Carver, and some of you might think, well, that's a bit of an obvious choice. I'll tell you why I've picked Carver. I've picked it because I think poor old Carver has a bit of an image problem. There are other sparkling wines made around the world that are doing a much better job at their PR, at their image, and Carver less so. Yet Carver offers drinkers a fantastic quality of sparkling wine for its price point. This is merely £8.95. To be Carver, it has to be made in a very specific way. And that way means that the sparkle of the bottle happens naturally within the bottle that it's sold. And that sparkle is a really long process. It's a second fermentation in the bottle that takes about 3 years. There's only one other sparkling wine style that has such stringent criteria, and that's champagne. Carver is made in exactly the same way as champagne,
but it's from grapes grown in Penedès around Barcelona. It's from grapes that are called Xarel·lo, Macabeo, which are local grape varieties. And you get a very good alternative here to champagne. So this is a dry style of sparkling wine. That long aging that I talked about adds a lovely toasty note to the flavour. And this is a really elegant, sophisticated drink for the price. And as long as it remains a wine that does have a little bit of an image problem, in many ways, that's good news for wine drinkers who know how to seek out value, because the wines are, frankly, underpriced for what they represent.
Well, I couldn't agree more with what Pierre had to say there. I mean, Carver. The first thing we do when we get to Barcelona, when we stay in our little apartments in Barcelona, we head to the supermarket and find a few bottles of Carver, because for the money, it's an absolute fabulous refreshing drink. Cheers.
And Guy, I think this is where things start to go really wrong with this program. But anyway, cheers to everybody.
Well, you know, it's well past 5 p.m. UK time, so it's officially wine time for us. And if you get the chance, please go and enjoy a glass of Carver whenever you can, especially that you now know a little bit more about its history. And if you don't drink, absolutely fine, so long as you can take time to step away from this fast-paced world of telecoms and savour a moment of enjoyment and reflection. I've got to ask, Emmanuel, would you trade your champagne for a bottle of Spanish Carver?
Well, at least I will have to try. I'm not sure I will make this ultimate choice, but I will have to try for sure.
Thank you.
But perhaps a little bit of an unfair question there, Guy. But I think it's fair to say that I'm not quite sophisticated enough for Carver. I think I'm definitely down the stack. I think I've just realised that. Okay, Guy. Yeah. Well, a great interlude, and obviously, very pleasurable for us. But I think it's time to come back to our audience questions.
Absolutely. Right. So here it is. Are we going to see a redefinition of a systems integrator? With so many components associated with 5G core, will the major established vendors prove to be the best choice for most telcos, except perhaps the very largest ones, to meet their integration needs? So we're looking at the role of SI and integration as more and more components are added to the core now. Emmanuel, have you got any thoughts about what we might see moving forward?
Well, introducing 5G, in particular 5G SA, implying a new core will be, of course, a big challenge. We will have many new network functions. Doing a cherry picking for each network function, I'm not sure it will be the good solution. It will be far too much complex, and I think we will have at the end to find, let's say, the best trade-off between, let's say, giving all the key to the same vendor. I'm talking as a CSP, as a range. So finding the trade-off between giving all the key to the same vendor, and at the same time sharing the whole chain in many 2, 3, 4 maybe parts, each one given to one vendor, in order to have at the end a reasonable complex solution, but at the same time very efficient. On the choice that we have made as Orange, it's to have 3 parts: one part for the core in itself, one part for the signaling part, and one part for the database. So we have three main parts in our core, and we believe that it is the most efficient way to handle the problem.
Oh, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that with us, Emmanuel. Richard, do you like to come in on this as well?
Yeah, thank you. I think the role of the system integrator will definitely change. Even the nature of the integration is very different between previous generations and this one. So historically, to do a multi-vendor network, you would take multiple, I would say, black boxes from different suppliers, and the integration would be mostly about functional integration, interoperability testing following the 3GPP specs. With the cloud-native solution, with the cloud-native 5G core, the need to implement CI/CD processes, the need to automate much more of the network. I think the integration challenge is quite different. It's much more on the non-functional and not just on the functional side. I'm not sure that system integrators are the right choice per se to do this. We certainly work a lot with system integrators. We tend to do a lot more pre-integration as a vendor than we did before, and we've been working since the beginning, since 2018, with a certain set of partners, specifically on those non-functional aspects, to align on the open source modules, to align the end-to-end CI/CD chain, and take that to the system integrator. And the role that I see for the system integrator is much more in terms of then taking that 5G core capability and other network capabilities and combine that with the industry vertical knowledge that they tend to have much more than most of us in the telecom industry, and build the different business outcomes that are required to really get the full potential of the of 5G. So I see the role of the system, the role of integration per se is that the nature of integration is changing, and there will be much more focus on non-functional, or there already is. And then the system integrator, I think, can really add value by combining knowledge of the telecom industry with knowledge of other industry verticals to create these differentiated outcomes.
Thanks, Richard. Interesting points there. And as you say, it's interesting to see the rise of pre-integration as well over the past few years. Timo, did you want to add some comments to this topic as well?
Yes, yes, please. So first of all, we as Red Hat, we are not the system integrator, and we will never be. We are not built for that. But system integrators are definitely needed, and I think we as telco industry, we have done very good job during all these NFE years, starting 2012 or so, kind of practicing, rehearsing this system integration. And I think the system integrators have come a long way to be able to do the job. And I'm also sure that the traditional equipment providers are doing a great job on system integration in many instances. And so that's needed. And as Mark was saying, the new model, this open source model and CI/CD and all these GitOps things we were discussing earlier, those are big challenges for system integrators, maybe good challenges, because they need to understand and know how to deal with all these things. And what I'm saying, I've been saying for quite a while, I'm not sure if this is a very nice thing to say, but what I've been saying is that the telco industry needs competent, motivated, and affordable system integrators.
No, that's a very good point, Timo. Thank you for sharing that. If there's no other views or extra pickups on that topic, then let's move on to our next question then, and over to you, Ray.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Great answers to that last question there. And here is our next question. In the news this morning, IBM and Red Hat announced that they will be building and deploying an open hybrid cloud platform for Verizon as the foundation of Verizon's 5G core. What does the panel think of this approach? Is an open hybrid cloud platform, one that is also containerized and web scale, the best way to maximize 5G core capabilities? So this is quite a lengthy question there, but one about an approach to how a 5G core essentially is deployed in, I guess, a telco cloud architecture. Mark, would you like to comment on this?
Sure. I mean, for me, this question is about scale primarily. And we have our own network cloud, Telco Cloud, which is now live, and we've got a number of apps being deployed on it. The first one went live in the past week. But for hybrid cloud, and therefore making use of some public cloud, that question for us is really about scale. And there's a very interesting bit of analysis released by Andreessen Horowitz in May called the $1 trillion cost paradox in cloud. And what they've shown is that a number of businesses, once they hit scale, actually start repatriating their workloads onto their own infrastructure. Dropbox was the classic example of this. So then the question is, do telcos have enough scale to primarily run their own infrastructure? And I'd argue that for most operators or a lot of the market, the answer is yes. And if you look at our daily peak traffic, it's well in excess of 20 terabits per second, the peak traffic every day. So there's definite scale in our core competency of network that we wouldn't necessarily want to put into hybrid cloud. Now, that being said, there may be certain types of workload where we want to be able to scale up into public, but I don't think they're the sort of key network functions, for example, in a 5G core.
Okay. Interesting, yes, and I must admit I hadn't come across that bit of research, but that sounds like a very interesting trend, and obviously one that's happened before elsewhere. Does anybody else want to come in on this topic at all? And if not, we can move on because we've got plenty of other questions and plenty to talk about in the programme. So, Guy, back over to you, I think.
Yes, thank you, Ray, and thanks, Mark, for that. And that was an interesting piece of research out there. There's I think there's an associated quote with that, which was something to do with you can't afford not to be in the cloud, but then you can't afford to stay in the cloud. So it's a real dilemma, especially for the startups, Silicon Valley startups there. Right, before we move on to our next viewer question, we have another special feature this week, which we're calling Your After Show. And we're asking our viewers to share their memories of past MWC events. You've heard from our guests today about their first experiences with the show, and hopefully you've had a chance to watch the first episodes of our Top 10 Mobile Moments series. And if not, I do thoroughly recommend that you do. Now, we want to hear from you, so please send us any photos you have, and you can use the form on the website to get in touch with us. Now, here are a few from our TelecomTV team. A sneak peek, if you like, behind the scenes. That's the one and only Martin Warwick on the right, and that looks like a smiling Tony Poulos to me. Goodness knows when that photograph was taken. It looks like an old Polaroid from years ago. Obviously, some behind-the-scenes shots from the crew there of TelecomTV at work and in action. Yep, I think we're still using the same computers. And of course, it's very hard work at MWC. There's, you've got all that wine to drink, but you've got to stay connected. Now that I do recognise, that is the most amazing gin bar in Barcelona. Is it Boados? I think it is. Oh, what a contrast to that place. I'll say no more about that place. Yeah, look at that. That's what Barcelona's all about.
The usual suspects.
Yes, TelecomTV, absolutely the usual suspects, hard at work there. Right, now back to our after show. Ray, do we have our next viewer question lined up?
Yes, we do. Thanks, Guy. And here is our next question. As the 5G core becomes disaggregated, will best of breed 5G core deployments become the norm rather than operators sourcing an entire core solution from a single vendor? So this is that kind of the multi-vendor integrated approach rather than the single vendor delivery. Emmanuel, what do you think? Is the future for 5G core deployments in the mobile industry, is it going to be multi-vendor?
Well, I strongly believe that it will be multi-vendor because as a CSP, we need to, let's say, to keep our independence on the long term. So giving all the keys again to the same vendor will be dangerous. So I'm fully convinced that it will be multi-vendor, and that's why it is important for us to have a full interoperability between all the solutions that we are going to deploy in our networks. And as it was said before, we will have many challenges to face. We will have to set up, let's say, the network function on a cloud infrastructure. We will have to make the network function working between them in order to set up a whole chain. And we will also to set up, and this has been already said before, all the processes in order to make the life cycle much shorter than today. So definitely,
Okay,
I strongly believe that it will be multi-vendor.
Okay, so that's a big thumbs up for multi-vendor there. Any other comments from our panel today?
Yeah, I'd agree with Emmanuel. I think it will be multi-vendor. At this sort of best of breed for every single network function, I think will be challenging. But I think if you look at it as it might play out over time is probably the best lens. So, and it's related to the system integrator question as well. Over time, we'll get better at running network functions in software, and the disaggregation will become more clearly understood to operators. And then it'll start to look much more like an IT platform, and we'll get much more comfortable with operating in a multi-vendor way. So I think over time, the diversity is likely to go up, especially when you start considering the different ways that you can disaggregate the network through slicing and through control plane, user plane separation. So you may, in certain slices, want user plane from a separate vendor that's controlled by your common control plane functions. I think those opportunities will come along. And also, we might see vendors specialize in certain verticals, for example, where you might want a set of components for a slice for a specific vertical where the software just performs better for the job that it needs to do.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Mark. Very interesting perspective. Thank you. Timo, we'll come to you now.
Yeah, so I need to come back again to NFV because that was a good idea in NFV, still is, to have a horizontal platform and multi-vendor capabilities and integration and all that stuff. And again, what industry has learned during the NFV days, which is now shown in 5G standardization, is that the software APIs are crucially important to do the multi-vendor integration in a consistent way. So I think that development has been excellent, and again, I think NFV really, or NFV time for 4G and other places, really did a good groundwork for what we are now seeing in 5G.
Okay, yeah, excellent point. That was a good grounding for a lot of companies in the telecom sector, for sure. Okay, and Richard, sorry.
No, I'm happy to just add a couple of words. So I think that the future that Mark described is an appealing one, but I think it's also very clear that we've talked about this in the past in other discussions. The network is expected to be much more dynamic in the sense of being able to instantiate slices and being able to move workloads around. But I think the piece that Mark was describing is also much more dynamic in the way that we compose the different elements of the network. And this is, I think, if we can do this as an industry, we have a far richer ecosystem, we have much more innovation, and we become capable of really capturing significantly more value than we have done in the past. So this capability of integrating from multiple vendors to be able to test things, to roll them out, and to be able to choose the right tool for the right job, I think it's fundamental. The key question is, can the operator processes be evolving in order to facilitate that? I think I'm still seeing a number of operators that are having pretty long new product introduction processes with many checkpoints and many steps along the way. It's clear in order to fulfill the future that Mark was describing, we need to have much more automation in that process, and we need to be able to really shorten the cycles associated to all these steps in the NPI process. So very, very interesting to see if we actually achieve that vision.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Things moving at different paces, but I think the pull from the operators and a push from a lot of the vendor community, I think, is happening at the same time. And I'm sure we'll start to see, even just in the second half of this year, a lot of acceleration there. Okay, thanks everybody for your comments. Back over to you, Guy, for the next part of the programme.
Yep, thank you, Ray. Well, it's time now to check in on our audience poll. And this week, it's a little different to the usual. We're going to be deciding who wins the daily Great Tapas Taste-Off. And if you watched a debut of our news programme, The Slice, earlier today, you'll have seen Ray and me make our pitches for our favourite tapas, complete with homemade videos from our respective kitchens. And we asked you to decide on a winner. And today's choice was between Ray's albondigas and my cured ham. And the winner is, drum roll please. Oh, it's a whitewash, Ray. Unbelievable. Look at this, 78%. Wow. That's like a 4-0 drubbing in the Euros. Wow, this is terrific. Well, thanks everybody. What a surprise. We start the week on 1-0 to me, with 3 more taste-offs still to come, if I can say taste-offs still to come. This is all a bit of fun, of course, so we'll keep the polls open a little longer. And don't forget to tune into The Slice tomorrow around midday UK time to see the next challenge and Ray's chance to draw even. Okay, I think we just about have enough time to squeeze in one more viewer question. Ray, do you have one for us?
I think I do, if I can just get over the choke I felt at that crushing defeat on day one of the tapas taste-off. So let's look at the final question for today. Does a hybrid cloud for 5G core provide the most flexibility, enabling CSPs to switch between cloud providers for different services? And will this help to keep down costs? Okay, so the hybrid cloud, is this the best approach? Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Is the hybrid cloud the way forward for the 5G core?
I mean, I answered this a little bit earlier. There is another perspective, I guess, which is if you can perform arbitrage between different clouds and drive the price lower, then hybrid cloud might actually be much more attractive. But so far, that's proved very difficult. I know there's some innovation. Some third-party companies have tried to do that and make themselves a middleman in cloud providers. That might make it more attractive, but it's an additional integration burden that I think would be probably too problematic to make it successful in the short term anyway. Right.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Any other comments about the potential or the suitability of the hybrid cloud? Yes, Richard. Thank you.
Yeah, just maybe to echo what Mark is saying. I think the vision there is quite appealing. But I think the battle is not there today. The battle is there's still a lot of work that we need to do to become proficient on cloud native, on just a single cloud, to truly embrace the CI/CD, the automation, the things like network slicing. So I see there's a lot of elements that need to be put in place before we can start thinking about something like the hybrid cloud and being able to switch between different cloud providers. Now, I like the question. I love the ambition that's coming from it. But I think we need to be tempering a little bit the enthusiasm and look at the challenges, the short-term challenges that we have to overcome first.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Richard. Okay, excellent. So I think if that is all the comment we have, Guy, I think it's back over to you, because it looks like the red light is flashing in the corner of our digital studio.
It certainly is. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We were simply having too much fun today. Thank you so much to all of our guests who joined us on this live programme, and to our audience for watching and sending in their questions. Now, we'll be back tomorrow with another live after show programme, but before then, we have plenty more in store for you on day 2 of Spotlight on 5G.
Yes, tomorrow's Strategy Outlook takes an in-depth look at the 5G radio access network with interviews and roundtable discussions. We have 2 further episodes of our top 10 moments in mobile, where we take a look back at our best video content from 20 years of covering 3GSM and MWC. And tune in around lunchtime-ish UK time for The Slice, our daily news and analysis programme.
And we'll also be hosting a special O-RAN Alliance Industry Summit, which is a live show with audience Q&A, which is packed with O-RAN Alliance executives. and that starts, I believe, at 2:30 p.m. UK time. But please check the website for full details. Then Ray and I will be back at 5 p.m. UK time for the live after show. It's going to be another very long day. For now, though, thank you for watching. Cheers and goodbye.
The after show was recorded in front of a live online audience.